Okay, recording started.
Welcome, everyone, to our POE webinar tonight. We're lucky enough to have Brad McEwen from Hockey Canada. He's the head scout for Hockey Canada, U17, U18, and U20 on the male side. He'll introduce himself, but it's a great pleasure to have him on to talk to you guys tonight on just for us to try to get more kids in the national program. That's the goal for tonight, is to get some expertise and hear from the top so that we can get our players moving forward. Well, Brad, on to you.
Thanks, Jeff. Real pleasure being here. Excited about the opportunity and chat about player evaluations and needs and all those kind of things. You know, from the national team level, we need obviously great support, and we have that from the member branches and all the regional area associations that feed into our U17, U18, and our World Junior team. And I think we do have a fairly clear criteria of what a national team player looks like. And I think tonight, what I'd like to do is, Jeff rolled out some questions that I'm certainly going to try to answer and at least give my thoughts on those. But I'm going to do it kind of through the scouting process. And I think that'll explain and give you some history and some feedback on how we look at players for the national teams, how they move through the process to some degree in terms of 17s, U18s, and U20s. What I do at the national team is I basically am involved in building 6 teams a year. The 317 teams that compete in the November event when it's held. Our U18 Halinka team in the summer, and then the U18 World Championship team in April, and then ultimately our national junior team, which within our program is the pinnacle and one that I do spend most of my time or a large majority of my time working on. But in order to get to the national junior team, there's lots of evaluation. I think in Canada, we're blessed and we're lucky to have a tremendous player pool, depth. So as the head scout, it's quite a privilege to be able to, it's the one job in Canada in terms of a scout where you get to look at all the players and then pick what you believe for the most parts are the best within regions and within club teams. It's not quite like that. I've been on that side also, so I understand how that all looks. Just to give you a little bit of background on myself, my history is really as a coach. Coached minor hockey for several years at the midget level, and then moved into a Tier 2 situation, Saskatchewan. I'm based out of Saskatchewan. And I coached in the Saskatchewan Junior League for 10 years and GM'd, and then moved into the Western Hockey League for 17 years. I was an assistant coach. I was the head coach. I was a GM, player personnel, kind of learned from kind of all different angles, and then went to the Flames in Calgary for 3 years and was on the amateur staff there, and then was lucky enough to become the head scout of the national team 3 years ago. So my background, and I certainly, when I evaluate players, I look from a coach's lens, and I think when you do scout, and depending on what your background is, I do think you look at players a little bit differently, and how you develop and all that kind of stuff, I think is looked differently. Whether you came through a management side or strictly a scouting side or an analytics side, I do think you look through a different lens. And I rely on my coaching background, and look at attributes that as a coach you want to build your team around. So that's a little bit of the history of where we're at with our program. And I know what we're trying to do right now, and Jeff's part of it, gold medal pathway initiative with the member branches and Hockey Canada is looking at how the development among branches and members are, and certainly we've talked a little bit about player evaluation and how we can make that a lot more fluid between the associations and the branches and those type of things from the U16 to U17. So I do think it's imperative that we talk about development, we talk about players, how we see it all come together. And again, tonight I just want to kind of go through our process. And again, as I said earlier, our process will outline a lot of the development needs in what it takes to be a national team player, and obviously building those skills and develop those skills and those needs will give players a better chance to get into our program at some point. Just to kind of give you the overview quickly, and our scouting process at the POE, there's 4 quadrants to it. There's the in-person, which I do heavily throughout the year. And then from in-person on the U17 side, we have 6 regional scouts, 2 in the West, 2 in Ontario, 1 in Quebec, and 1 in the Maritimes for the U17. So we get, and that's the challenging one. And for our POE program, it is a foundation. Coming through the U16s and watching some of those events and working through the process and going through the criteria. We try to build enough of a book on the players that when we come to our selection for the summer camp, we have enough information, but it is a challenge. And the more we can work with our branches and with our regions and all those things, understand what they look at and what we need, and come together in some common criteria, the better we are. The second thing is we do use a lot of video. Our ability to use video is so much better than it was. U17 is a little bit challenging, but we have a great platform for 18s and our national team. The third thing is we do have an analytical piece to it that we have created at Hockey Canada. We have our own platform on that. We have Sport Logic, which is unbelievable in the information that you're gaining. One thing I have found on the analytics side is that you can also get overwhelmed with too many categories, too many metrics. What you really need to do is, if you have access to analytics, in my opinion, is really narrow what you value. And I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later in the presentation. And then the fourth thing is the character and personality assessments. And early in our program, in the 17s, we're certainly a little more lenient. We're a little more understanding on that side. Our biggest thing is trying to find as much skill as we possibly can within Canada, and that's the first criteria. Is we want, our first goal of ours is that we want skill, we want talent, we want the best players, and we'll put up with a little bit within our program early, and see how the young guy matures, how he grows up, how he evolves, before that piece really comes into play. Now, understanding, personality and character. If somebody's robbing the convenience store in the corner, that's an issue. But if the kid's entitled and a little arrogant and a little cocky, it doesn't scare us off. And I think as coaches, we need to be able to work with those players and develop them and find a way to maximize their play and their performance. So that's kind of the 4 areas that we look at in the scouting process. My discussion today is going to really revolve around the in-person scouting, and obviously the character and personality. Won't touch a whole lot on those two because, again, I mean, what we want to talk about tonight is development needs, what it takes to be a national team player, how you guys can develop them within your programs, and how we believe you can coach them to give them a better opportunity to have a chance at the national program. So the first thing we look at is through the player evaluation as a criteria, and really as a coach and developing, this is all important. I mean, this is the things that we look at. Obviously, we've got a numerical review and evaluation that we use, and we could break we have more of a definition a little bit within our criteria. But you look at skating. I mean, obviously, the way the game is played now, and especially at the international level, you have to be able to skate. Now, you look at, you can get a burner that's just up and down the ice and just flies around but doesn't have a whole lot of sense, or you can have a guy that maybe he's not as quick, but his sense, his anticipation gets him in the right spots. And an elite player that we've had in our program has had great success going through the NHL draft, Cole Perfetti. One of the knocks in the scouting industry is a little concerned about his skating. Now he's going to be a top 5, a top 8 player for sure, but there's some concern on his skating. But a player like that, I look at him and I've watched him enough that maybe he's not going to burn. He's not probably going to beat somebody wide, but his sense and his offensive ability and his is so uncanny and so high level that he'll find a way, and his skill level is so high. So I think, I've even come to the conclusion, I think skating can improve as you go through. Even if you have a little bit of a flaw, I still think I can improve if the player really wants to work at it, and that you can get to a level where you can be a contributor to the national team. Skill, obviously. I mean, when we talk about best player, we want skill. We want skill throughout our lineup. And I really believe you need to teach that consistently. I think as coaches, you can have a skill component every single practice at some point. And I think when we're talking about skill, the puck handling, the possession, the shooting, creativity, hard skill, soft skill, which I'll explain a little in depth as we go through. But we need to attack. We need to play with skill. We need to be able to make plays. What we're finding at the national team level is that it's harder and harder and harder to have success. And by having success, I mean gold medals. Other countries are right with us, improving every day, getting better. You look at the U.S. and how their game is growing and how they're developing skill. It's unbelievable. The Russians, obviously, and really since I've gotten into this job, the Russians, it's intriguing because I think they've gone away from more of the possession and skill game and are playing more of a harder, direct game, and it has caused us. It's caused us a lot of problems, and you saw that at the World Juniors, especially when they gave us a pretty good licking the first game. And I'll be honest, if we would have had to play that team in a best of 7 for a gold medal, there would have been some real challenges. Our best bet was to get them to one game, get the goaltending we got, and some tremendous efforts in that one game, and that was our best chance, and we were able to get a gold medal. But I mean, they're a hard team to play against. The Swedes, they just seem to be rolling out defensemen, transitional type guys that just go. Their forwards, not as skilled, but certainly skate and do some great things. Their goaltending has been good. The Finns are interesting, small country, small federation, but boy, they play with so much passion and they play so hard, and they play a structure really close. They're a team that they just want a 1-goal lead, and then they'll milk that right as long as they can take it. So they're good. And then you look at the advancements the Germans have made and the Swiss have made, and the Czechs. have had a little bit of a downtime, but I think if you watch them the way I have the last while, their program is coming around, and it's just getting hard, and it's great. It's a great challenge to all of us, all Canadians, and everybody that's involved in the game is finding ways to get our players better. So to continue on with the criteria, the skating and skill is pretty obvious. The offensive sense, defensive sense. I think more and more the way the game is played, you have to have, you've got to have a brain. You've got to be, especially at the elite level, at the high level, you've got to be able to understand spacing and understand plays and great instincts and all those kind of things. So I think that's something that we certainly evaluate as best you can on both the offensive and defensive side of it. And I think there is a difference between the two. I think offense guys have it a little bit more naturally, where defensive sense, I think, is more of a learned thing. I think that's where coaches have more responsibility and ability to teach that and to really impact your team from the defensive side. The last thing what we watch for, and this is a really, really important attribute, is the compete side. I do think, and again, there's another slide.
Brad, we seem to have lost your audio.
Yeah, I've lost him as well, Jeff. Can he even hear us?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
I thought it was just me.
Yeah, it seems to be. I don't know. We can't see him either now.
Oh. We still have his share.
Yeah, I don't know how to get in touch with him.
I don't know if he's seen the chat either. I'm trying to ping him in chat. What about an email, JR?
Yeah, I'm doing that right now.
Okay. Okay, apologies, coaches. We're trying to get in touch with Brad about the audio issues. Um, Stay patient. JR is going to see if he can track him via email. He's obviously not hearing us as well, and he's not seeing the chat. So hopefully we'll be able to get his attention soon. Any luck getting through, JR?
Nothing as of yet. No, I'm
Oh,
calling his cell phone, trying to get a hold of him.
well, I think the technical issue was on his side.
Yeah, it seems that way.
Yeah, he's frozen and keeps dropping out. Well, our apologies, folks. This is the probably the one and only downside of the virtual world and the technology that goes along with it. So we ask you to please be patient. We hope to get Brad with us soon. I see Andy Bryan threw a comment on the chat about maybe a quick round table. Any questions? If there's anything you want to throw out, we can answer it, chat about it, whether it's logistics, coaching related. I'll keep an eye on the chat, and we can have some Q&A while we're hoping Brad can get back. Lee, I see your question came through. We do have his PowerPoint, and we certainly can forward on to him your question about standard eval forms for the 3 positional players. And we can get that information shared back out. Anything that we can collect from him or share, we'll put in the same Google Drive where we've been putting the rest of the recordings, and then Jeff can send out share links on whatever we might be able to share. Okay. Let me try that, Alex. Yeah, good idea. I'd already looked at that. Don't know if I can get his back or not, but I'm going to try it.
How's that?
There we go. Brad, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you now, Brian. Sorry about that. Phil.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, one of the coaches made a great recommendation for me to interrupt your screen share. We lost your audio for probably about the last 10 to 12 minutes.
Okay. I will kind of work back a little bit and see.
It looks like it might be a bandwidth problem with your Wi-Fi.
For sure it is. Yeah, for sure it is. I live in an area that isn't great. I live out in rural Saskatchewan, fellas, so you have to understand. Okay, what about now? Can you see the?
We can see that it's starting to share.
Oh,
No, we lost you again. I don't see any of the coaches that are on with their video. Just for anybody that's on the session, if you haven't turned off your video, let's get you to do that. I don't see many. That might help.
Still there, Brian, or not?
No, we've got you back, but we've lost the screen share.
Okay.
maybe try it without the screen share. Might help.
Okay. Do you have my PowerPoint I sent you this afternoon? Maybe you guys want to just put it on. I can just guide you through it.
We can try that.
Okay, let's do that.
Brian,
You can go ahead, Jeff.
Just maybe let me know where what slide was lost.
yeah, we ended here.
Okay, thanks.
I think it was this one, right?
That one there?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thanks, guys. Geez, you should have listened to the first spiel. It was really good when I talked about this slide and talked to myself. I apologize for this for sure. So when Jeff rolled out some questions and some thoughts, when we're going back and forth on the presentation, this is one that he had brought forth, and we talked about what should be the vocal point in your teachings throughout the year. I think obviously the four things off the criteria that I talked about: skill, skating, compete, sense, how you value those, how you believe that they fit into your principles and what your values are with your team. And then really you get to the keys to the player development. And this is where those four boxes is how do you maximize your player performance? And for us, I deal in a short-term environment. So we need to maximize players for 2.5 weeks. We need to get every single thing we can out of those players. And we have to ways prior to the event that we can push, the coaches can push the buttons and whatever needs to be done. One of the things we've talked about is more of a principle-based strategy than an actual hard tactics. Now, the tactics are still, you have to have tactics: forecheck, neutral zone, D zone, all those things matter. But how much detail and how much, how in depth do you get versus trying to maximize the player through a skill, keeping him free, that he can just play the game and react and use his sense and use his skill. Now, again, understanding, we have access to the top players, so it's a little bit different in that regard. But it's really important as you guys are teaching and coaching your team, where that separation is, tactics versus maximizing player performance. And one example I have is Dom Ducharme, who coached our 2018 World Junior team. We won gold. He was so principle based, and you'd watch him practice angling, tracking, all those able to roll our lines and play with with the relentlessness, and came after the opposition and just came and came and came. And I give our coaching staff tremendous credit for not overcomplicating the game, yet having enough structure and putting the things in place to make us successful. So I think from a regional a member branch point of view, I think you're dealing with your teams. Let them play. You got to coach them up. You got to have tactics, but there's got to be a fair point where they need to play and react and anticipate and feel confident when they're on the ice. Okay, Jeff, if you could move to the next one. Character and personality. So when I opened up, it was really the criteria was one, character and personalities. And we put a lot of effort into post events, post camps, in gathering information from our management group, our coaching staff, our support staff on personality and personality traits regarding how the players were around the rooms, how they reacted to support staff, how they took coaching, all those kind of things. And we keep obviously a library of information on the players. And then obviously it's my job to do digging, and our regional scouts and the people I know is to find out more about personalities. And again, it's a little bit of a fine line, is that we've all been in situations where we get a little scared off because of the personality, the strong personality, the characteristics, but I'm a believer that you have to be careful that you don't take too much and get scared off and take a player that could help you because he's a skilled guy. And again, we're dealing with young kids and teenagers, and I think it's our responsibility as coaches and hockey people that you have to guide and direct. And it's a little easier again in the short term because again, at maximum you're going to be with that player for a month. With the guys on the call, you're going to be with that player for a season. So I get that it's a little bit different, but I really believe it's the coach's job is to fit the personalities in, work with those guys, and again, maximize what they can bring to the team. The feedback from the Canada programs within the Team Canada stream, this we call it the 360 evaluation of the player. Look at the whole picture, the whole player, the whole personality, skill set. They say the analytics, the video work, everything, and really determine how that player can help us within the national team program. Do they fit into the culture and overall makeup of the team? And again, I think you as coaches have to determine that. But again, I think look at the big picture. Is there set chemistry with certain players and athletes? And again, we look at that even from our level. Is that teams that have players that have gone through the program, maybe at U17, and they played in the same line and developed character, or pardon me, chemistry. That we certainly note that. And as we're going through, we're not afraid to go back to that, whether it's in camps or whatever, just to see if we can foster that throughout the national team experience. And then what type of person, player, athlete are we getting? And again, it's just doing that full 360 evaluation and know the personality, know the player. And again, if we know the player, we build a relationship. Honestly, you're going to maximize that player personality because you'll be able to really push the right buttons. Okay, Jeff. This is just a little more of an extension of maximizing that player performance and the building relationships in terms of the character and personalities. And I can't stress enough is know your athletes. Get to know them, not just, when you're on the ice with them at practice or on the bench. Get to know your athletes, away from the rink a little bit, and family background, and as you go through the elite stream, there's a support system, good or bad, that's around them. Understand who those people are, what they're about. Understand the information, the information the player's getting other than coaches, and be aware of that. Know the personalities, the strengths, the weaknesses. One of the things that we really stress, and I think on any team, is the player has to be accepting. And again, we're dealing with the top players in Canada. So when it comes to trying to build our teams, it's interesting because the majority of the guys are centermen. How many of the top guys play center? Well, you can only have 4 centermen, so we need to push players out to the wings. All the guys that we deal with, they play top 6 on their teams. They all they're all in the power play, probably the first unit, all those kind of things. So when they get to us, they believe they're going to be in those same roles, and that's not going to happen. We're going to determine through play and coaches feel and all that where everybody fits. So we spend a lot of time on getting players to accept and them feeling good and confident and accept what their role is. Because an individual doesn't feel good about where he's at or doesn't feel valued can be a distraction. And we've all had those players. So we work a lot, our coaches work a lot of time on accepting and role. And we need players that are dependable and consistency, again, as I said a little while ago, for 2.5 weeks. That's what we need. And we put a lot of time into that, but it's no different for you guys on a length of a season. You need players to be accepting. They don't have to always like the situation, but they have to accept it, and they have to learn that. And the only way they grow as a player is that they do accept it. And if they accept and keep working, good things are going to happen. And as coaches, again, that's something that we have to communicate regularly with and get your players to feel good and feel valued, and that's the key. And as I said earlier, the last slide, don't be afraid of personalities. And how do you handle outside influences? And again, in this day and age, it can be a pain in the you-know-what, but it's part of the player. It's part of the environment we all work in. So you need to be able to handle it professionally, understand it, and use it to your advantage. So I really believe that the skill set and building the skill sets and the tactics, that's all important. But I believe strongly that within the national teams, the building of relationships is just as strong, if not more important, than the actual tactics that we need to teach also. Okay, Jeff. So this is just a slide to kind of finish off the four quadrants. These are the platforms that we use in our evaluations. RinkNet, some of you might be familiar with it. It's a player information gathering platform that most teams in the NHL and Major Junior and Tier 2, and there's a lot of teams use this platform for player database scheduling. It's information gathering. It's really a useful tool. Instat is something we've just got over the last 6 months, and they've really been valuable. Instat's a video, primarily a video. There's some analytics to it, but a really good video platform that it breaks down shifts for every player that you can imagine, playing junior and college and pro, and so you can click onto a name and bring that player up, and he played 15 minutes and 20 seconds, and he played 22 shifts, and that's all you watch. So it's pretty good. SportLogic is primarily an analytical site, statistics site. It's valuable. And then HCAP is Hockey Canada's. We developed their own analytic, and it's kind of combined with SportLogic. So I just wanted to finish off the process and give you a little bit of idea of the four quadrants and how we do it. Okay, Jeff, if you move to the next one. Okay. So on this slide, what Jeff again had asked a couple other things, and what should we continue to work on? And I really believe our game needs to, especially at the national team level, is that transition game is so important. We need to bring a second wave of offense. We need to get our defensemen up into play and provide options. We need to attack and create offense. And I think we're doing a good job teaching that at the league levels. And it's something that we're putting a lot of emphasis on is to create offense. And I can't stress enough how important that is. It's not easy to score at the elite level, at the high level. So you need options. So I think that to continue to work on things for players to continue on and get into the national, you need a transition game. You need to be able to understand spacing. You need to attack with speed. You need to create offense. And I think the other thing is goaltending development. I think we need to keep working on that. I don't think our goaltending nationally is overly deep. And we need to keep encouraging our guys that are playing goal to keep working at things. And again, at times our goalies get so technical that they maybe aren't that athletic guy that can make those second and third saves. So there's a trade-off, but it's a position that's so valuable. And I think as coaches, when we have a real good goaltender, you take it for granted. And when you don't have an average guy, you say, holy cow, how important is that position? So we need to keep working with our goaltending and really have a plan, especially on your club teams. What's good in our system? I think skill development. I think our skill is through the roof. I think people are doing it, and teams are doing a great job on that. I think players have taken the initiative to really improve and enhance that part. The possession game, which is, we're evolving that. I think teams do a good job and coaches do a good job of allowing players to get up and make plays and possess the puck more. So I think we're doing lots of good things on that side, and then on the other side, Jeff asked what's lacking in our system. And I think, one of my major concerns is development of our defensemen. I think it's lacking, and I really, especially for the national game. You talk about what a defenseman is. To me, it's you've got to be able to retrieve. You got to be able to skate. You got to be able to retrieve. You've got to be able to exit. Your first pass has to be with a purpose. You've got to attack. You've got to jump up on transition and understand spacing and understand when the play is good to go and when it's dead. You've got to have an offensive sense off the blue line. You've got to be able to defend. In this day and age, it's not about big, hard, physical defenders. It's about quickness. It's about anticipation. It's about stick usage. So the position has changed so much, and we need to keep developing and working with our defensemen to keep improving that, because I do think, again, we're not real deep, and I think it's come. But we need to have our defensemen play with more purpose, and get involved with plays more, and defend hard. Be a dog on a bone, but you got to be able to be elusive, and you've got to be able to shake that first forecheck and get the puck going north and south real quick. So that's the area. I kind of addressed the lack of competitiveness. I think that's a little bit of an issue again with our generation of our players, and players training with each other so much, and spring teams and summer teams. I think we need to foster that competitiveness within our club teams and do things that brings it out. The relentless play. I just think, again, I always say with our national teams, we should never back up. We should never trap. We should never play on our heels. We should always be on our toes, and we should go. Because I think when one of our advantages at the national team level is that our depth, the first and second lines on every team is really good. Where we get our advantage is our 7th to 13th forward, and we need to use that advantage by getting them up on their toes and playing and beating their shift and beating the matchup. And then in order to do this, to strengthen our players, I think a lot of small area games and play is vital in practices. It brings out skill and small area skill and that kind of stuff, and skating and edges, but it also brings out competitiveness. And again, I think that's so important. Okay, Jeff, if you want to go to the next one. So building the rosters, and again, I don't want to, time's kind of running here. When I refer to building 6 rosters, and it's a little hard to see, unfortunately. But what we try to do is both on the forward side and the defenseman side, we've come up with a definition of 3 types of defensemen, and try to put that type of player and skill set onto the player. So when we're building our rosters, we look for certain skill sets and what they can do, how we can complement each other, how the lines work. So when you look at defensemen, an offensive, I'll just read the one offensive player: low panic threshold, patience, great thinker, multi-directional skater, deceptive, offensive threat, puck skill, point shot options, power play. So that to us is an offensive player. I'm not going to read through. We have an offensive defenseman, transitional defenseman, and complementary defenseman. On the forward side, we've got hard skill players, we have finesse players, and we have multi-tool. And all those things can be taught. They're developed. So again, it kind of, for us, it just kind of brings some clarity to the player and the player type, because I find if you don't, you kind of get a mixed mash of guys. So I think when you're even building your team, you can look at the player types and put some more thought into how you want to build your rosters and the type of players. So that's kind of an example of that. And again, it's a little tough to read and a little small font, but hopefully you get the gist of it on those. Okay, Jeff. So just to kind of continue to finish off here. So again, 6 teams per year with the POA roster is what we build. And again, the differences in what I do and what you as coaches and long regular season, the short-term events, I do look at things a little bit differently. I think again, when you're looking at the pool of players that I'm able to scout and evaluate, really look at drivers, guys that drive pace, drive play, drive their line mates, take charge, those type of guys. And then we divide them into complementary. So you're either a driver or you're complementary. And complementary is not the worst thing. I think you need more drivers than complementary guys. But for me, complementary guys have to be productive. They've got to have a real strong niche in their game. They score, they shoot, they have great anticipation. They're not up on their toes as much, maybe, but they're around the play. They find space. They can make things happen. They're good complementary to the driver, obviously. We talked about roles, acceptance within those roles, flex players. We call them flex players. You might one night be the second line right winger, and the next night you might be the fourth line centerman. We need guys that can flex around the lineup and still give us good depth. Activity, when I talk about that and we evaluate that, is how does a player play? Like, is he a high energy guy, a mid energy, low energy? Now, he might be a complementary low guy. Well, then you better be a pretty productive guy in that category. You're a high energy guy. You're on the puck, probably more of a driver. The productivity, again, trying to rate and rank our guys high, mid, low, and just, again, breaking the lineups down, understanding the depth of your lines, the defenseman pairing, and all those kind of things. So those are kind of the 6 areas that we really take a look within our roster builds as we go through it. And I think that that kind of ends the PowerPoint. Jason? Or Jeff, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brian, do you have some questions that came in?
We did. Had one came in from Brad Rose. From Lee Rose. Lee, if you're still on the call, I still see you listed. I'm going to ask that you unmute your mic, and I'll let you ask your question to Brad directly.
Thank you. With respect to accepting the players in a 2-week period, there's no parental. I would say there's little to no parental issues. But when you're building a roster and you're working with that team for 10 months, who knows, less than that this coming year, time will tell. There's you're accepting players for cockiness, arrogance, potentially, because you want to work with them because it'll potentially make your team stronger. But then if that's carrying over and it's you've got that factor that you got to mitigate, you got to mediate, that can be quite the situation over the course of a 10-month season. And I think that's basically what I was suggesting in my question with respect to parents and accepting players for who they are and not running away from someone that's sort of pushes the line between confidence and arrogance, let's say.
Yeah, no, that's real good, Lee. Thanks for the questions and the points. And I think you're absolutely right, is that, understanding the before you get them and understanding kind of maybe what's happened in the past and how he's been handled and the goods and the bads. And it's interesting when you say for 2.5 weeks, for us at the national teams, there's not as much interaction with parents or agents, but there is still some, and it still needs to be managed even in a short-term event. So it's even a long season. The only thing that our advantage is that we have to manage it 2.5 weeks, whereas you said it in a regular season it's 10 months, and that's really the challenge. And I don't know if I don't really think I have the answer. All I'm saying is that, and I think you mentioned it, don't run from it. Like, work with that player. Sometimes, as I was guilty of that too, you just kind of tired of working with them, so he just kind of fades away. But I think to maximize the performance, as tough as it is, you just have to keep, selling your values, selling your principles. Here's what we do. Here's what's expected, and you have to just stick to what you believe in as a coach, and the parents or the agents, they have to understand that too, and you have to move through it. And not always easy, but I'll guarantee you, the kids that get out on the other end and have improved and evolved, you as a coach have done a tremendous job, and you feel good about that, and the player feels good, and we'll have a chance to go on to the next level.
Brad, quick question I have. I'm just wondering if you could, for the coaches that are on the call, if you could just elaborate on Dom Ducharme's process that he took to teaching and coaching the World Junior team. We hear things like for the first half of the event and leading into the event, he didn't do any tactical preparation, tactical work. He was all about concepts, principles, playing the right way, right up until they made the playoffs. And then they got a bit tactical. But can you just elaborate and speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. And again, that was my first exposure. I got with the program, got hired in October. So we had U17s, and that was the only ones. But the major event was watching Dom and Joel Bouchard run the World Junior team, and you hit it right on the head. Like he was all principle, fundamental based. Watching practices when we got to camp, it started right there in December, and worked through the pre-comp and the exhibition games. Is that he focused primarily on his team, on our team, and when we talk about principles, I said earlier, like tracking was so important. Stick on puck was so important. So, when you went down to forecheck, it was contact, but your stick was on the ice, it was on the puck, and you're always doing things the right way. Work ethic, obviously, angling. I couldn't imagine how much time we put into angling at that level. He would do an angling drill every single practice, right through camp, into pre-comp and exhibition, where just simple, he changed the angles, changed the areas he did it, but it was all angles, stick on puck, body position, discipline was huge. And again, at any level, but at the international level, when it's a little unpredictable, you've got to be disciplined with your motions, with your play. And it was interesting because the outdoor game in the U.S., we were good right up till then. And then the emotions and the whole thing, our emotions got the best of us, and we took some real silly penalties and costly penalties and ended up losing the game. And Dom didn't even address it for that rest of the day. We went back to the hotel, didn't address it. He addressed it the next day on preparation of the next game. Or pardon me, didn't even do it then. He did it when we started the playoffs. So I think we still played another game after that, and then he addressed it going into the medal round. Again, he didn't want to. Everything he did, he had purpose, and you're right. We didn't spend a lot of time on tactics. Again, there was some organization, but the principles, he just pounded in, and that team played hard. It played free and it played hard, and it was responsible.
Yeah, it's interesting. Have a question.
It was really interesting.
Have a question here from I believe it's Ryan Lozon. Ryan, if you want to unmute your mic and ask Brad your question.
Yes, thank you, Brian. Thank you, Brad, for the presentation tonight. I just got a question. And basically, you can look back at any sport and you can see previous drafts, especially from a few years ago, and you can be kind of really shocked that certain teams missed on absolute studs that were picked like a couple guys afterwards. So basically, my question is, so what do you feel are the major contributing factors as to why so many NHL teams are wrong with the players they draft? Do you think the draft age should be pushed back a year? And is the regional bias some teams have a factor? And is the media a problematic distraction in the players that some teams take?
Yeah, good questions. I'll start with the media part. I think most staffs stay away. There's so many, you follow it. There's so many lists. There's so much media talk that you have to really, kind of work at staying away. It's interesting, as a scout, it's interesting what people are saying, but you've got to be strong in your conviction of the player. I think there is a little bit of a regional bias with teams, which can get you in a little bit of trouble. I think as a scouting staff, I can't emphasize enough the staffs I've been around and the ones that have been successful and other ones that haven't, is that I believe you have to have a strict criteria and you have to have a process to how you do it. And you have to have tremendous communication within your staff. And you may be surprised that this doesn't always happen with every NHL staff for sure. But I think sticking to the criteria and sticking to your process eliminates the noise, and it eliminates terrible mistakes at draft day. Now, I think we all, I more than anybody, because I'm in the business, is when hindsight's 2020. How I see a player through my lens is different how you see a player through your lens. Like, everybody's different, but how you can pull that together is the understanding of the criteria and understanding the process of how how do you get to your draft list. Point, and the staff is committed to that, and it's well taught and well understood. I think you make less mistakes, and that's my experience is not everybody does that. But you say regional biased, I think size becomes. I think that's the bias that can get in the way. I think it really makes teams to have bad decisions when size is one of their biggest important criteria. Personality also. I don't know how many times I've heard in the scouting world and through the jobs I've had is that you get the buzz on this player is he's a bad kid. He's a bad kid. He spit on the floor once in practice, and when his coach is talking, and he doesn't listen. And I mean, how many times have you heard that type of profile on a player, and he gets pushed down where he shouldn't be. And then there's other times when, the player's just hasn't evolved enough, and all of a sudden he comes out, and a year later he's Cale Makar, and who would have guessed? But so there's those instances too. But good question, and it's interesting. And I always really believe that you have to always visit your criterion process. Like, as a staff, you should always, once a year for sure, you go through the process, and don't be afraid to go back and look at your prior drafts and look at what did that player, why did he go where he did, or why did we take this player? Not criticize him, because I think that's way, way too easy. Why do we take it, and have an honest look every year of how you can improve that, and also how you can get better in the process.
Thank you.
Brad, you touched on this a little bit during the presentation on one of your slides, but just a little bit more pointed, more from a U17 perspective. And no disrespect to the many junior coaches that we have on the call, because we have a lot of them. But for the AAA coaches that we have, Bantam, Midget AAA coaches, from your perspective, players that are coming into that U17 national camp every year in Calgary, that massive group of 100, 110 that come out of the Gold Cup and those competitions, what would you say, maybe your one or two, maybe three things that the scouting staff and coaches see that players lack, that is a surprise? Like, sitting on Hockey Canada seminars this week for the coaching, I heard a guy like Daniel Kachuk say he was shocked that players coming into the camp couldn't angle, that their angling skills were so poor. From your perspective and the scouts' perspective, if you were to say to some of the coaches, here are some key items that are really lacking that we got to get better at.
There's a couple of them for sure. I think one is the acceptance and understanding that when you are the big fish in the little pond in your region, they come with the attitude, and this is just part of the process. It's not bad. It's just the way it is. But it's how you handle it, is that when you come into a national event from your regional event, now you're one of 113. Like, there's good players across. So how do you adapt? How do you accept it? There's a lot of big dogs. There's a lot of alpha males in this group, and how don't you get lost in that. Everybody there is a good player. So you have to find a way to go out and play and exhibit your skills and your play. So I think that's one thing. And I think the overall game, again, when they get to the 17s, they're not slotted kind of where they always believe they should be. So rather than getting a little upset or mad, how can you adjust your game, and are you able to adjust your game? And I think that's where you need the coaches. They've got to put players in all kinds of situations as they're evolving and developing with their own team, so that it makes them more rounded. And again, I understand it because these guys are your top players, so they're going to be in top player situation. But I still think you have to find ways, and you got to hold them accountable to do the things that aren't always pleasant to do, but it rounds your game. It gives you more depth to your game, which as you move through the system and through the national teams, there's going to be more opportunity for you. So those are a couple of things that I see regularly on, especially at the 17. The 17 is the hardest age group for acceptance and handling adversity. How do you handle adversity when things don't go right? And it's hard on parents also. I find I have more. I don't personally have a lot of phone calls, but I get more feedback on those aspects at the 17s than I do at the 18s and the U20s, for sure. So,
Great. Thank you. Had another question come in from Lee. Lee, if you want to unmute your mic, I see you're still on the call.
Yes, resources. You've identified in your PowerPoint presentation what you think we in Canada are doing well, what we need to improve on, and what we really basically need to improve on. Is the Pandora's box Hockey Canada's resources that you can access through online, or is being a Hockey Canada guy, I'm sure you're pro that, but is there other areas, other avenues that websites or Lord knows what, that we as coaches are saying to ourselves, we need to bring more competitiveness into our practices? And we can go to Hockey Canada's website, but maybe there's another resource out there that you're aware of that you would like to shed some insight on us that we might want to access.
yeah, thanks, Lee. And I think there's great resources, Hockey Canada, and in terms of what they produce. But I think probably it's a little lacking in terms of the competitiveness side and how we can kind of up that level. And I don't have a resource site. Not coaching anymore. I don't dig into that as much. I dig into other areas, but I believe that there's all kinds. There's 1,000 sites and 1,000 places you can get information and but I put the onus on the coaches. I just say, you guys are all good coaches in your own areas. Take it upon yourself to build that out. How does a competitive practice look? How does a competitive drill look? And I put the onus back on you guys, is that you don't need to go to a website. I think it's, you look at the small area and how you can, how you can make your practice flow through competitiveness play, and build it yourself. I think everybody on this call is quite capable of that, and I just think it's something that, you have to, it's a little bit of a skill to develop that, but I think everybody's capable. And I really believe you need to put that as one of your fundamental things that you're going to work on with your team and get them as competitive as they possibly can be.
Great, thank you. I don't see any other questions coming in on the chat line. Jeff, was there anything you had before we close out?
No, that was great. Brad, I appreciate it. Having you come in talking to our coaches was real beneficial. And like you mentioned before, the gold medal pathway is in process now with all member branches and with the collaboration with Hockey Canada. So there will be something starting in June of 2021 that is kind of a funnel from the Hockey Canada through the branches to the MHAs and teams, with in terms of skill development and et cetera, and coaching development through through the gold medal pathway, and that'll be processed for next June. So that's a resource that we will have from a branch that we can push out. And this kind of was the first step for us, is to get Brad on the call here, and moving forward, help our coaches out a little bit more. But that was great. I appreciate that, Brad, for taking your time tonight to talk to our coaches.
Thanks, guys. I really enjoyed it. Apologize for my lack of internet in Saskatchewan.
We got through it.
Whatsoever.
All right. I wish everybody good luck as we move forward, and players you can push nationally, the better off we are.
That's our goal. Thanks a lot.
Right
Brad.
on. Great stuff. All right. Thanks, guys.
See ya.
You bet.
Okay, thanks everybody. Just for those who are still on the call, Marty Johnston is up next Wednesday in our next series of the HEO development webinars. The following week, we have Corey McNabb from Hockey Canada, the development leader for Hockey Canada, is going to do a presentation, and we are working diligently on filling out weeks beyond Corey, 2 weeks from now. So we're looking at extending into August and keeping these going as long as we can. Just as a shameless plug, I would encourage all of you to reach out to Jeff and get more information about the program of excellence, right from our U13s, U15, our goalie POE, our Gold Cup program, Hockey Canada's. If you need more information, Jeff has all that. He can get it to you. There's a lot of information out there, and with the gold medal pathway coming, it's there's going to be a nice direction for things that we do, especially at the AAA and junior levels, that will help prepare and build players for national exposure and national programs. So it's all exciting stuff. And as always, stay safe and stay healthy. And we'll see everybody next week.
Thanks a lot, guys.